Oh, hey, Maurice. How's things? Maurice, are you okay? What's the matter, Maurice? I've never seen you look so sad and abandoned before.
Evitel, check out my sick new wheels! Wheel!
Taliesin.
I'm done with Maurice. Who needs a hippo when you've got these sick wheels? I meant wheel.
Taliesin, don't be so cruel. How could you? There, Maurice. Taliesin, are you okay?
Yeah, sorry, I just had the most terrible dream.
Oh no, it wasn't about having to play a priest in WoW Classic again, was it?
Oh God, no, nothing like that. No, I'm fine. It was stupid. I'm sorry. I'll go back to sleep.
Okay. Good night, Taliesin.
Good night, Evitel. Good night, Maurice.
Knowledge is power.
Hello, Internet, and welcome back to another weekly reset, Taliesin and Evitel's Wondrous Wisdom Show. And obviously, we have the absolute biggest bunch of stuff to talk about this week, as the 8.2 livestream reveal gave us a whole ton of information about the upcoming Rise of Shadows. I mean, Storms, Skywalker, Ashara, the Rise of Ashara patch, which resulted in the usual creator-feeding frenzy of reactions and hot takes and whatever it is Belle's doing. Look, Belle's working on a different dimension to anyone else these days, and it's something us mere mortals can't really comprehend. But the important thing is that after 5 videos in 24 hours, the last one ironically titled Finally Something New, which made me chuckle, the bloodlust should at least have partially sated and your families are safe for now. And of course the 8.2 PTR releasing next week, maybe even by the time you watch this video if we don't get a move on, is something that we've already covered too in a 66-minute video from our hotel room in Irvine after actually playing the thing and having 2 feedback sessions with WoW devs. But we wouldn't be doing our job if we didn't put everything together in a more scripted and easily consumable form here for you, as well as all the other new info that has come out since, as well as taking a look at the community reaction and the tiny little matter of there being a new 2-boss fun side raid, the Crucible of Storms, going live in the actual live game though this week. Important not just because it's a raid, but also because of the massive heaps of story involved. There's a lot to get through is basically what I'm saying, and that's before we even get to what is, for me, the best and most interesting part of this video. The promise we made to you back in that super long hotel ramble, and in the title that you just clicked on to get here, the final boss of Battle for Azeroth. The big bad of the entire expansion, because like I say, it's actually fairly likely that the PTR will have gone live by the time this video reaches you. Sorry about that jet lag, you know. In which case, you'll have read it yourself already, but just in case it hasn't, let me set the scene. Because I'm one of those people, Internet, with certain priorities. You know, you can fly me to Irvine, to the Blizzard campus, and you can put me in front of a PC with the new 8.2 PTR and the whole of Mechagon open and inviting before me. And yes, I am going to start testing that new Heart of Azeroth system eventually, of course I am, but not before I've taken a look at the Dungeon Journal for the new Ashara's Eternal Palace raid and gathered any clues I can about what exactly is going on there story-wise. And Internet, I saw some things which were interesting enough by themselves, but when Ian Hazacostas told us that at the end of the 8.2 raid we would know who the final boss of the expansion is, well, the things I saw became very interesting, to the extent that I now am pretty sure that I know who that final boss of BfA is. And I will be sharing what I read there with you so that you can come to your own conclusion later on in the video. I know, look, don't be like that, okay? I'm not baiting you, it just doesn't make sense structurally in this episode to talk about the final boss before we've even touched on anything else. So look, fair's fair. If you want to skip all of that and get straight to the juicy Dungeon Journal talk, click on the timestamp in the first line of the description now. Ha! Nice try, losers, but as you've just discovered, that timestamp brings you right back here, because this is my show and I decide on the running order, okay? Suckers. Okay, fair's fair. You can just scroll along in the video until you see a whole bunch of red spoiler bot warnings in the corner, okay? That's when I'm talking about the final boss, okay? Oh, you're no fun at all. In the meantime, the 8.2 PTR is coming. We all now love Jeremy Fiesel, as if we didn't already, and there is a lot to discuss, which we and every other creator has already done plenty of by now. So we're going to keep this bit snappy. First up, what isn't in patch 8.2? Well, there are no new allied races. This was confirmed in an interview a little while ago. No new allied races in 8.2. No mention of them, no suspicious Vulpera size gaps in the character select screen, nothing. There's no new major class changes. Now, there is going to be a bit of class balancing going on, which we've already seen the beginnings of in blue posts, but this is mostly just the odd tweak here and there to balance classes better around the new Heart of Azeroth traits and sort out any extremely obvious problems like, oh, I don't know, the odd outlaw rogue Azerite trait here and there, I guess. But that is all that this round of tuning is. Don't expect any major shifts in the fundamentals of how classes play. If that's the reason you're not playing WoW right now, and it's a reason many people give, then this isn't going to solve the problems that you have with BfA, sorry. Likewise, there don't seem to be any meaningful PvP changes lined up, even if the new epic Ashran battleground could be really fun. So far, there is a conspicuous lack of new Goblin or Worgen models mentioned in the same breath as 8.2 either. At BlizzCon 2018, these new bods were announced as coming in a future patch, which could mean Rise of Ashara. It would seem more likely to be 8.2.5, but it could be 8.3 or 9.0 or beyond. We just don't know at this stage. What 8.2 does give us though is 2 new land masses, the usual story, raid, a new mythic mega dungeon, mounts, collectibles, and probably most important of all, the new Heart of Azeroth Azerite system, which is the long anticipated replacement to Azerite armor. Except, you know, it's not really a replacement, is it? Because Azerite armor still exists. It's a new system on top of the system that everyone agrees doesn't work, which will hopefully work better and be fun enough for us to completely forget about the other system, which is still there and which we still use all the time, but hopefully we won't notice that because this other system, which we now have. Yeah, I'm going to leave that one to Evitel, to be honest, because there was another new feature announced in the Blizzard livestream too, one which caught many of us off guard, the mount equipment slots. Now, this is a really simple idea, essentially a gem slot for your mount, which unlocks at level 100 and bestows upon your mighty steed a beneficial effect. So there's one which stops you getting dazed as you're charging through hordes of Naga that you can't be bothered fighting on Nazjatar. There's a slow fall effect for anyone that spends any time in Dazara lore, and of course the inflatable mount shoes, which will allow your mount to walk on water, just like the Water Strider already does. The equipment itself is made by crafters and can be swapped out exactly like gems. That is, as often as you like, at the cost of destroying the equipment that you are replacing. And this equipment slot is account-wide. When you put an effect in there, it applies to any mount that you select thereafter. So if you equip the saddle chute into the slot, it doesn't matter whether you swap between your hippo, or your frog, or your hippo, or invincible, or your hippo, you will benefit from slow fall. There are some mounts that aren't affected by the slot equipment, like the Sky Golem, which already has the harvesting ability. The thinking being that adding water walking or non-dazing or slow fall on top of that would make it even more a go-to mount than it already is. And that's the whole point of this new system, isn't it? To open up and democratize, well, let's just say it, water walking, so that players have more freedom to use whatever mount they like instead of always having to go with the Water Strider and new non-flying content because it's objectively the most useful a lot of the time. Oh yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned the Water Strider though, because as a result of this new system, that mount is having its inherent water walking ability removed. The idea being that since you can apply water walking to all of your mounts now anyway, that specific mount ability just isn't necessary anymore. And if you think about it, if you could still go all Jesus with the Water Strider and still use another piece of equipment in the slot to essentially get 2 effects, then that would defy the whole point of the system because everyone would still use the objectively better Water Strider over any other mount. And that was a subtlety that was not lost on the forums, where obviously some eyebrows were raised, but generally the player base was full of excitement at the prospect of having more choice, more freedom, more ways to tailor their own gameplay experience to their own preferences, more options in the... No, it was a shit show, obviously. They better change that water walking thing. That's BS if they take away what we already earned. earned. Everyone gets a trophy. Didn't do water walking while the rest of us wasted hours? Flick it, free water walking. The current devs, much like the current group at Lucasfilm who ruined Star Wars, think that this is now their game and everything that went before it can be flushed down the toilet as long as they get what they want / like. Okay, so I think one of the main problems with this is the level of misunderstanding from a lot of people, because forum comments are always funny, obviously, but rarely have I seen a subject where so many players are objectively wrong. Comments like, just another way to slow your content consumption. They don't want you traveling too fast. You might consume the minute, bland and boring content they make too quickly. Simply doesn't make sense. Blizzard aren't making the game harder here. They're not making water walking harder to get. Exactly the opposite. It's now an ability that everyone has access to without needing a certain mount. This change will speed up the rate at which players consume Blizzard's minute, bland and boring content. So let's get our facts completely straight here. Mount equipment slots are unlocked at level 100, but the slot, not the equipment in it, is account-wide and usable from level 20, so you can still use water walking on your alts to level with, no problem. And yes, the day 8.2 goes live, your water strider will no longer be able to water walk by itself, but if you own the mount, then you will receive a free inflatable mount shoes item in the mail, and if you ever need to buy more, you can get it from the Angler's rep vendor, which will presumably be a lot cheaper than being at the mercy of the auction house. So although water walking is no longer unique to the water strider mount, it is still a lot more convenient and easier if you own it. I am though a bit more sympathetic to opinions like, but it does suck when something you worked for gets changed out from under you, because yeah, I get it. Cool, unique gear which is hard to obtain and has a little RP value is one of the most important things in an MMORPG. I totally relate to that, and the fact that as the proud owner of a water strider, I get one free piece of equipment and a cheaper way to get that equipment from then on is nice. It's certainly a perk, but it's obviously not as cool as having the only mount in the game that can do that one thing. And whereas personally I consider what I gain from this, the ability to use any mount I like next expansion, and when I say any, I of course mean my hippo, as being on balance gaining much more than I've lost, of course I can still appreciate what is lost too. I would point out though that the water strider has not been a real achievement to earn since Mr. Pandaria time walking has been a thing, has it? When I decided I wanted it, I got it in one day using rep tokens that I bought with time walking currency. In fact, one of the very first episodes on this show was called Free Water Striders for All. It's not a big deal to own a water strider is what I'm saying. But I do get it, and honestly the solution would seem pretty simple. Just make the water strider's water walking ability fixed like the Sky Golem's herbing skill. It would technically make the mount less useful overall, but that appears to be the option that most of the player base would prefer at this stage, so I wouldn't be surprised to see it happen.
So a quick and snappy recap of the other things we've got to look forward to on the PTR this week. And in order of coolness, the #1 most anticipated feature has to be the Heart of Azeroth, the new Azerite grind that will see players unlock what are essentially new active and passive talent slots on their neckpiece, and fill them with permanent interchangeable essences, which are gained through different forms of content. It's a really interesting idea. Some of these essences are genuinely interesting and some are ridiculously overpowered. I guess that's what PTR is for, right? Generally, the reaction has been pretty positive to this new system, and it's not hard to see why. It's at once more simple and more customizable than Azerite armor, and each essence having a legendary cosmetic only version, which just makes it look totally baller, adds a pleasing collector type quality to the whole thing too. There is some disappointment that the essences are the same across all classes. Those hoping for spec-specific abilities aren't gonna get them, I'm afraid. But you know what? Don't blame us, okay? Because at Blizzard, Taliesin was the only person who challenged Ian about that at the feedback session, but then Ian just gave him a big brown bag of money and suddenly Tali was fine with the traits being more universal. It was really weird. And yeah, the majority of these essences feel like good trinkets rather than a real new part of your rotation. That's another valid concern. But for me, the most important things I wanted to see from this system are in place. Abilities which you collect and don't lose later on, which can swap out and find different combinations to alter your abilities in different situations. I think there's potential for a lot of interesting stuff here, so it's getting a tentative thumbs up from me for now. Worth waiting a year for? Well, you can decide that yourself this week when all essences and the first major and minor slots will be unlocked for you to play with. Actually, as Jeremy Fiesel pointed out in the livestream, the PTR is surprisingly advanced at this early stage. We don't know the release date yet, but we do know that both new zones will be open from day one, with the new dungeon and raid currently scheduled to launch on the same day, in week 2 or 3, though Ian did stress that this is provisional and subject to change. What that means is there's plenty for players to explore in this week's build, like the new Mechagon area with all its collectible secrety fun times. We've already talked about this loads in our big 8.2 video, as well as the Operation Mechagon, or OMG, Dungeon 2. It's as cute and characterful as you'd imagine. There seems like there's always going to be a reason to head back to the island for relaxing, grinding stuff. It's going to be an absolute Gankarama hellscape if you have war mode on, and that's a good thing. Gankarama hellscapes are always a good thing. And the meta achievement, with all its outrageous criteria, awards you the crazy beautiful mechanical wheel mount that everyone wants more than anything else. It's my kind of place. And also the dungeon is called OMG. There's the new heroic Stromgarde warfront and the new island expeditions, both of which had breadcrumb quests up when we were on the PTR, which suggests they might be testable this week, but we'll have to wait and see on that one. And of course, the new Goblin and Worgen models! No, I'm only joking, you're never getting those. You're staying ugly in low res forever. You'd better just get used to it, sorry. Now, obviously, as soon as the PTR does actually go live in a couple of minutes, there will be a whole host of new models and mounts and other cool stuff being dug up by WoWhead for us to all perv over, and maybe if we're really lucky, some war campaign stuff concerning a certain unfortunate factory farm cow. So I'll leave Rise of Azara there for the time being. Needless to say, if you want any more information about any of the 8.2 features coming our way, like a guide to all the new essences and what they do, to details about that Mechagon punch card trinket, to what we know about Pathfinder Part 2, then all you have to do is watch 66 minutes of us talking in our hotel room. Oh, okay, fine. You could always just go to the relevant WoWhead articles we are linking below. But right now we are coming back to the actual real-life live game, because it's kind of easy to forget in all the excitement. But there's a new raid hitting this week. The Crucible of Storms sees us venturing below the Shrine of Storms into splendid fleshy old god yuckiness to take on some of N'zoth's most senior buddies in a 2-encounter mini-raid. Which is cool. I love a good mini-raid, but this one in particular has some very important story it needs to deliver, which makes it especially worthy of our attention. Basically, a lot needs to happen between now and 8.2. Sylvanas gets given Xal'atath, and then learns something that makes her decide to send the Horde fleet out to find Azara with the Alliance in hot pursuit. How and why does any of that happen? Hopefully this raid will give us some of the answers. And look, I'm not saying there will be a cinematic at the end of this raid, okay? I feel greedy even hoping for one, and I don't want you to think I'm greedy, alright? I'm just saying I wouldn't be totally 100% surprised if it turned out that there was a cinematic at the end of this raid or in its aftermath. That's all I'm saying. There's a lot of story that needs to happen in a short space of time. That's all I'm saying.
Okay. We got there. Congratulations, you've now successfully made it through the equivalent of 5 separate Belialar videos to get up to speed with all of the 8.2 stuff, and you've made it to the bit I've been looking forward to the most. Because Ian Hazacostas has said that by the end of Azara's Eternal Palace raid, we will all know who is the final boss of Battle for Azeroth. And that means that whatever happens at the end of that raid will reveal who that final boss is. Which is why, when I sat down in front of the 8.2 PTR at Blizzard last week, the very first thing that I did was dive into that dungeon journal to see what I could see. And if you're watching this video before the PTR goes live, then this will be news to you. And if you're watching it after, which honestly I think is more likely, this video is taking a long time to make this week, then you will already have your own opinions, and either way, it's worth talking about. So, as some of you know, we recently put out a Taliesin Talks video where I speculate that Azara and N'zoth, far from working together, are at odds with one another. And in fact, it's the old god that has sent us to the Naga home city to get rid of Azara for him. I speculated in that video that we might even fight the Lich King before our Tentacle Overlord, and this is what I was hoping to find confirmation or rebuttal for when I skipped to the description of the Azara fight. Now, interestingly, I've actually read on some sites like WoWhead and MMO Champ that WoW Chakra, another of the creators at the summit, has said this: Azara is not a servant of the old gods, and she believes she does not need their help to fight against us. Which, to be honest, I don't really know where they got that from exactly, because I'm putting a red spoiler bot warning up here. In fact, I'm putting all of the red spoiler bot warnings here, okay? I am not joking around, internet, because here, as best as I can remember it, is what was written in the description of that last fight. The fight that reveals the final boss. During the fight, Queen Azara tries to destroy the, whatever they are, pylons or something, some mechanic, keeping the players alive, whilst at the same time attempting to disable the seals, imprisoning N'zoth. Now, let's be clear, this is paraphrased because I was aware we weren't allowed to take pictures and didn't even want to write it down, but the meaning is intact, and I reread that last bit about 20 times to make sure I'd understood it right. Whatever is holding N'zoth in place and keeping him imprisoned, Azara is trying to disable those things. According to the dungeon journal that I read, Azara is trying to release N'zoth during that last fight, which might change on the PTR or by the time it goes live. These things often do, but that is what I read. Azara is trying to free N'zoth. And it doesn't take too great a leap of imagination that at the end of that fight, whether we kill the Naga Queen or not, she succeeds, and that epic cinematic, which is definitely going to happen at the end of that fight, shows N'zoth breaking free, and he is in fact the final boss of Battle for Azeroth. Because if we know at the end of that fight who the final boss is, then who else could it be, right? Now, obviously, this doesn't tell us about 8.3 or what form that might take, but remember that all of this is happening within the first couple of weeks of 8.2. In all likelihood, there's still an 8.2.5 patch to come after that, which will likely expand on that story leading into the final patch, and where it's set even more. So there we are. It's N'zoth, just like everyone expected. Not very surprising, perhaps, but certainly extremely cool. Except, maybe not. Because yeah, it certainly seems like N'zoth is released at the end of this fight, but maybe not. That huge cinematic could show any number of things, like N'zoth's release leading to the rebirth of all of the previous old gods, something which I've been hoping for all expansion, please. Well, you know, there's this other thing that I can't quite shake from the back of my mind, because it was Sylvanas who led us to Nazjatar, wasn't it? Whether we are Horde or Alliance. It was her that really wants to get Azara because of something that she learned from Xal'atath, the Naifu she will apparently be carrying with her at this point. You know, there's always the possibility, of course, of that particular artifact weapon boss fight being the climax of the expansion, like we speculated back in Legion. And of course, there's always Sylvanas herself, the only subject of a Warbringer animation not to have been a final raid boss in BfA so far. And there's that thing, isn't there, where I'm certain that there will be a Lich Queen in place by 9.0, and whether that be Sylvanas or Talia, could that be what's revealed in that raid cinematic? That's some pretty wild speculation, and I'm happy to admit that obviously the N'zoth final boss scenario looks about 98% more likely than any of the other possibilities at this stage, and that is where I would put my money, on Battle for Azeroth ending with the biggest, creepiest, most tentacly fight against the final old god. And you know what? I'd be pretty pleased with that. And we're back home.
Hello.
We're back on the sofa. We're not in America anymore.
No,
we're not in the hotel room anymore,
not.
Dorothy.
You know how I know that we're no longer in America? Because last night we were karaokeing, oh, I guess they're all pretty much American songs.
Great content, great content. Insightful. Yeah, so we had like a bit of a week. Oh my goodness. Oof. And yeah, it was intense, it was busy, and I'm sorry that this video is probably a little bit late. Yeah. I'm thinking it's coming out very late on Sunday, or maybe even on Monday. Maybe at the same time as the PTR. Who knows, which will make the entire thing completely useless, but I hope you enjoyed it anyway. What was your favourite part about being in America, apart from your brother's wedding?
Okay, apart from that, it was warm. It was so nice.
You're meant to say.
The sun
You're
was
meant to say
out.
my opportunity of giving my feedback to the dev team of World of Warcraft, and then taking that feedback very seriously.
Yes.
Even though a comment on our video from our hotel room was, "Oh yeah, Preach was right. Only the butt kissing, like blizzard sucking shills got invited to this thing." To which my response was obviously, Preach got invited to this thing.
Exactly.
I don't think that's what Preach said. Lots of people have asked for our opinion on the Preach situation with us, by the way, and I did talk about it in depth on stream.
Yes.
So check out the VOD of our last stream if you want to talk about that. We're not going to talk about that now. That's not what this show is about.
No, we did miss him though.
Yeah, of course, and I think Team 2 missed him as well.
Heck yeah.
Like I say in the VOD, I think they'd be happy to have his feedback. But I gave my feedback. I gave my proper feedback. Do you know what my feedback was? Well, you do. You were there.
Yeah.
My feedback was, everything is perfect. Your game is amazing. I love it. Don't change anything. Do anything you ever want to do ever, and I'll just say it's good.
Yeah.
That's not what my feedback was.
No, it wasn't.
Okay.
To be perfectly honest, it was amazing being able to sit around a table with all of these game devs, with Ian, with everybody. Like,
yeah, seriously, it felt kind of magical in a way.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't just like talking to them or whatever. Like, they were specifically asking for our feedback on certain parts of this game that we love and have always loved. When I was an actor, right, years and years and years ago, this is a stream story really, but I'm going to do it here. When I was an actor years and years, I was in a play which was written by Tom Stoppard, okay? And Tom Stoppard, the world famous amazing playwright who I loved, was like in the rehearsals of this play, because it was like the first major revival. It was my favourite play ever written, okay? And I was sitting in there, and during one of the rehearsals, he rewrote one of the scenes. Okay, and he was like, "Oh no, that's gonna have to change," and he changed it, and he gave out all like the new sheets and everything. Nice. And he's like, "Oh, we'll have to have the anthology changed now." And I was like, "This is amazing!" I was in the room when Tom Stoppard rewrote part of my favourite play, and that's kind of what I felt like in Blizzard. Seriously, because we were sitting there, and there were moments when Ian would say something, and someone, usually me, would go, "Well, hang on, Ian, because blah 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 blah," and he would go, "Oh yeah." Yeah, we'll change that.
Yeah. And all of the other amazingly talented, cool creators.
Oh yeah, they had some good suggestions as well. But like, I had the best ones, for sure.
But no, it was genuinely amazing, and like we all went out for a meal afterwards, and like the conversations continued. And there was literally a point where I'm like sitting there chatting with Ian, with John Haidt, with Taryn Gregory, with Lore, and we're all standing around. No, I think it was actually Laura who came over and was like, "Guys, we need to sit down because they're taking our orders." And like me and Ian were just like having a conversation.
We're hanging out in the cool kid corner here.
Having a conversation.
I was not
right
in
now.
on this conversation either. Like, that's the thing. That's the thing. But at one point, I did find myself chatting with Taryn Gregory and Christy Golden and Katie, who basically writes all of the Jaina quests. So I was just in Jaina heaven right there. It's like, I was just like buying them all drinks, going, "Never kill Jaina. Please don't kill Jaina."
They were like,
I thought it was really useful. We'd be really interested to hear what you think of the 8.2 PTR when it goes live. But apart from that, we're looking forward to Raid this week.
Heck yeah.
Haven't actually raided for a couple of weeks because of all this nonsense. And we come back, we got a new raid to do.
Perfect.
It's amazing. It's gonna be the best thing ever. I can't wait. Two bosses. If we don't get them down in one night, I'm quitting the guild because we're noobs. Like, seriously, like
I think everyone might still be hungover.
I'm not sure if we're taking still on Thursday.
A week later, everyone's still like.
I'm just hoping we beat Vox Immortalis to the world first. I'm hoping there are no new guilds that have called themselves Immortalis to really mess us up, which I suspect might have happened. I'm just hoping that, like, with a new raid going, like, flasks and stuff are going to reach a decent price again on the auction house. Yeah. That's my hope.
That's a dream.
I'm not hoping for a trinket. I'm hoping for, like, some decent sales on flasks.
A little bit of cash.
Yeah. Oh, the gold for the long boy.
Are you doing that?
Yeah, that's what I'm doing.
Going for the long boy?
Yeah, of course I am.
Oh, wow.
That's like the whole purpose of my gold making.
I thought you'd given up.
No, well, I mean, I put myself back a bit when I spent like money on like 3 different frog mounts. So I kind of blew like 1 million gold then, which I'd been saving up. But it was what I'm saying is it was worth it. And those PvP toys don't buy themselves either. Do you know what I mean?
No. Or
I regret nothing. I'll just have to earn it all over again. Don't worry. Now I've got my tools of the trade.
Oh yeah.
It's Gold-a-rama. Those things are so useful. I'd say something bad about them, but Ian asked me not to. He took me to one side. He was like, "So can you just not talk about tools of the trade?" No doubt. Okay, when the PTR goes live, there's going to be some surprises because there always is in the data mining. Okay, so like we're gonna get all the stuff we've seen, all the stuff we talked about, but there's gonna be other stuff as well. Yes. What are you hoping for?
In the PTR?
Mm-hmm. Do you know what I'm hoping for?
Tell me.
I'm hoping for that day when I log on to WoWhead and I disable my ad blocker so that they can get all my lovely money. And on the front page there pops up that Kalia Menethil mod.
Ooh, okay.
That's what I'm hoping for. That's the thing that, like, every day when I go onto WoWhead...
You know what I'm waiting for?
What?
A concrete answer to how we get the B mount.
Yes!
That's what I'm waiting for.
The lesser spotted B mount. I hope it's easy. We're working with our friend EvoWow to make some really cool machinimas. Machinemas?
The way you say it makes
to make
me
some
giggle.
really cool, like, pre-animated scenes. Tara and Gregory, we're making our own cutscenes now. We don't need you, dude. We don't need him. And yeah, it's gonna be good. So hopefully it'll be good.
Okay.
Why don't you wait and see, you impatient bastards? But that's enough from us today. Thank you for joining us for this episode. If you liked this show, don't thank us. Thank our patrons who give their actual, real-life money to make these videos happen. Because without them, they wouldn't happen.
It's very true.
It's like as simple as that.
It's very true.
Simple maths.
Hey,
you do the math.
Are you streaming this week?
I am streaming. I'll be
are you
streaming 3 times this week.
Nice.
Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday from 4 PM UK time.
Cool.
Or your regional equivalent.
Nice.
And your regional equivalent for that matter. I don't know how Twitch works. It's fun though. If you didn't like it, downvote the shit out of it. And remember, my name is EvoWow. It's not. My name is Taliesin from me.
And from me, Evitel.
Until next time. Cheerio.